By uranium processing, you mean the enrichment of uranium?
No.
Oh, okay.
Recycling the uranium components of nuclear weapons, aqueous processing of uranium, machining of uranium, manufacturing of the secondary explosive inside the nuclear weapon, the hydrogen bomb part of the hydrogen bomb. And they have euphemisms. Canned subassembly is one name, secondary is another name. Lithium hydride, uranium are the main materials. Now, the way that this works out in the view of these groups is that they assume that the nuclear weapons stockpile rapidly falls to 500 nuclear weapons, A. B, that the work that's actually done on these weapons falls to a very low level, a de minimis level. That's the second assumption. And C, that there are existing facilities in all these places where they can squirrel away all this stuff. And we have looked at these assumptions in detail. The last one is the one that takes all the work. Where are the facilities? How old are they? How applicable are they? And that's a technical matter, and we don't think there are such facilities at all. The second assumption that the workload would drop down, the workload does drop down in design and testing, but there's a limit to how low you can go on the production side because A, there's not as much fat on the production side. They've never got the largesse in the production plants that the labs have gotten from Senator Domenici's constant pork meistering. And B, some of them are actually quite well managed. The Kansas City plant, as far as we can tell, is a problem-free plant. That's what everybody says from all sides of the spectrum. And we're saying, okay, don't break it. It's the only plant that works properly, only one that doesn't have a fiasco every 6 months. The deal is that if you're making 40 different product lines, there's only so small you can shrink each one of those product lines, even if you have 500 weapons or 100 weapons. If you still need 20 people to do a certain thing. And this plant makes thousands of different parts. And it's not, if you decrease the size of the stockpile by some fraction, you can't decrease the workforce by that same fraction. You can't reduce the number of machines, the floor space by that same fraction. You still, we disagree with NNSA about what that threshold is, but there definitely is a threshold. You can't make the assumption that we're going to quickly go to that number to be the planning assumption for the weapons complex. It's just a fantasy. And the problem with the fantasy, I mean, it's nice to have hopes and ideals, but the problem with making this fantasy a planning assumption is that it basically is being used to sugarcoat the geographic consolidation to New Mexico. And again, I want to say that the activities of geographic consolidation began 2 years ago. I guess I haven't even said what we think the very practical, cheaper, more straightforward, more politically useful alternative is. And that is to straightforwardly downsize them in place. What Gail said about moving workforce is it's extremely difficult to take people who are in their late 40s, in their 50s, in their 60s in some cases, and say, hey, you want to move to a new city away from your kids and grandkids and set up a new plant in Albuquerque where they're running out of water. And the studies that NNSA has done and the experience they have to date is that 90% of these people will quit. And that's one of the main reasons this is not a practical plan and why it's probably dead in the water. Downsizing in place allows attrition, allows one to retain the workforce, it makes the country comfortable, it keeps the community, it doesn't raise the specter of abandoning the economic base instantly. Allows you to create a community transition program, which is definitely needed. And you don't, the biggest thing is you don't build new factories. Building new factories is the way you perpetuate the nuclear weapons complex. It will take several $billions to rebuild these capabilities if they have to be moved to a new location. And we don't want to do that. This report says it won't cost anything, but there's no analysis to back that up. We believe that that conclusion has been largely backfilled around the prior assumption that was in place before even the very first grant application, that geographic consolidation was going to be the way that this would be downsized.